Israel is doing amazing things. White phosphorus, cluster munitions, it doesn't care. If you get in its way, it's gonna bomb you, it's gonna take your land, it's gonna alter your politics, and there are apologists who will continually tell you that Israel is actually epic and moral and just and that we should support it because everyone's a radical jihadi.
Fifth Israeli strike in Beirut since the ceasefire of last November, and that anniversary.
That is actually just crazy to think about. 5 strikes on the capital of Lebanon. Like, unbelievable, during a ceasefire.
Is just coming up in a couple of days' time. So it is a reminder to Hezbollah, if it wasn't already aware of it, that the Israeli leadership is hell-bent on continuing to break Hezbollah, to fragment it, to weaken it in any way possible. But of course, the real fear, the fear in Lebanon at least, is that this is going to escalate, that we'll see yet another Israeli full-scale onslaught on Lebanon, something it really and the population cannot sustain.
And Hezbollah has not responded to sustained Israeli breaches of the ceasefire, as you mentioned, over the past year. I mean, what kind of response might it be considering now?
This is kind of the interesting thing, because maintaining a situation like this, like where Israel just keeps on killing Hezbollah commanders and doesn't actually, like, you know, engage in a full-scale war is obviously very beneficial for Israel, right? Like, they don't actually have to do anything that significant, and yet they can just continue bombing and killing.
Is it in a position for any sort of sizable response?
It's hard to know. We see reports that Hezbollah has been rearming via the ports, via Beirut port, via the border with Syria, but to the extent that that was happening, it's very hard to know. Tabatabai was seen as somebody who was in charge of that, had been ordered to rebuild Hezbollah's armed strength. But then again, this is exactly what Prime Minister Netanyahu wants. He wants to have another conflict escalated like this. So I think the Hezbollah leadership is very well aware that a trap is being laid for them. So a precipitant response right now could be exactly what the Israeli armed forces are looking for, the excuse to go further into Lebanon and to rip up that ceasefire agreement and distract.
Part of me definitely thinks that, because I think what they actually want to do, obviously going to war with Hezbollah will be costly in the sense of Israeli soldiers will die. Obviously they've been able to destroy a lot of infrastructure south, but ultimately they just want to increase pressure on Hezbollah by basically making life untenable for Lebanese people. And generally this kind of stuff, like striking a capital, is obviously going to just cause instability there.
Of course, from what's going on in Gaza, where a ceasefire isn't really happening there either as well.
The Israelis have framed this as putting pressure on the Lebanese government and authorities and army to speed up the disarming of Hezbollah. Do you think that aim will be successful?
Not in the slightest. I remember in September when the Lebanese cabinet reviewed the military plans for doing this and wondered how this could possibly happen. Hezbollah would have to consent to all of this. The Lebanese army is not strong enough on its own to do it. It's not going to risk a great civil war in Lebanon over this. So I think there's a really...
By the way, it's also so funny to think about how you have so many people who are like, well, actually, Palestinians destabilize other countries. That's the main problem, that they destabilize these countries, and that's all that's happening. But yeah, it's like Israel is provoking a civil war inside Lebanon. But I also think that thinking that this is just a Netanyahu thing is also kind of difficult, because Israel is doing this and maintaining these because constantly killing Palestinians is the only way that it can move away from answering the fundamental questions of Israel. Most notably, like, as I've said, what a Jewish state is, what they're going to do about the two-state, and what they're going to do about Palestinians. Because these are not simple questions to answer in the context of this Jewish supremacist state that offers no two-state solution and is moving towards annexation of huge amounts of Palestinian territory with huge amounts of Palestinians on. Like, there's what's going to happen?
A major question mark about how this American-imposed plan is actually going to work. You have to give Hezbollah a reason to actually be willing to disarm, to actually rip up its military infrastructure. And that would have had to have been, at least minimum, a full-scale Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. At the moment, Israel is still holding on to 5 sites in southern Lebanon. And of course, as we've been discussing, is making regular violations of that ceasefire, bombing not just Beirut, but Bekaa and southern Lebanon and other areas in the country. So I don't see that this is going to bring us any closer to seeing the disarmament of Hezbollah. Far from it.
I think that this is also like a very optimistic position anyway, to think that like they're gonna be able to disarm them, because Israel isn't exactly doing well at like proving, no, we're not gonna do anything. They're still bombing Beirut. They're still occupying the south. And it's just like, yeah, I think like all of this stuff is just insane.
They're more likely to...
Like all of this stuff of just pretending that things are going to be fixed is just ridiculous. By the way, Joseph Aoun looks crazy. Like this guy looks like a Dr. Eggman or something. Girl with a microphone?
To want to hold
an egg?
Onto their arms, and will be able to get more popular support for doing just that.
Chris Doyle, Middle East commentator and director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, I mean, just insane stuff. But like, this is Al Jazeera's video on it. We'll see if this works.
Hezbollah's top military commander in Lebanon's capital on Sunday, Haitham Tabatabai, was chief of staff of the group's armed wing. Teams are clearing out the debris left by the strike on Dahia district.
I don't think they can ethnically cleanse 7 million people. Where are you talking about in terms of ethnically cleansing 7 million people? Because pretty much since the Zionist project began, David Ben-Gurion was like, this is in the book by Tom Segev, the first Israelis, that Israel basically wants to ethnically cleanse southern Lebanon so it doesn't have a problem on its border of people who are against Israel. Like, as simple as that. It wants a sympathetic Christian state. And, like, the situation in Lebanon is terrible for so many.
At least 4 other Hezbollah fighters were also killed in the attack, and dozens of people were injured. Israel has repeatedly launched attacks on southern Lebanon, claiming Hezbollah is rearming.
It is actually truly amazing that there are people who, like, try and litigate and claim that Israel is actually not violating the ceasefire and that this is the fault of Hezbollah. Like, I'm sorry, if you are the ones carrying out the mass killings, if you are the ones still bombing Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, it feels really, really hard to sit there and act as if, oh, no, it's their fault, it's the Palestinians' fault, you know. Oh, sorry, it's Hezbollah's fault. I mean, they'd still blame the Palestinians. They'd say they destabilized Lebanon and made Hezbollah. These people are crazy.
We were expecting this to happen. This brutality and barbarism carried out by the Israeli enemy with a...
I like how he's got a picture of Nasrallah there.
Here in the south, we're used to it. As we said, this only increases our determination and resolve, God willing.
It's also, like, if you just look into what's going on in Lebanon, I find it so crazy that anyone would make an argument for Israel, because it's very obvious that Israel have committed the greater amount of crimes there, both historically and since the ceasefire went into effect.
Of the attack in Beirut.
We are at the assassination site here in Beirut's southern suburb. In this building, Haitham Ali Tabatabai was last seen, and then an Israeli airstrike. Several missiles hit this building. We can see several holes in the building. The Israeli military targeted several floors in an attempt to kill Haitham Ali Tabatabai, who is known to be Hezbollah's top commander. Since the 2024 war, this is the highest level that the Israelis have assassinated. Over the past years, there have been several attacks, especially after the ceasefire that was reached on the 27th of November 2024. But Tabatabai is the highest and the most senior among those who were targeted. Now, this attack comes at a time.
Do you remember one of the craziest parts of when Israel was bombing Dahia in Lebanon? And they claimed that there was like a military base under a hospital. And then all of the international journalists went and investigated it and found that it wasn't the case. And the Israelis were like posting on Twitter, no, go check out this different bit. There's loads of Hezbollah gold under the area. And like a ton of journalists were there. This is once again their problem with Lebanon. And what I'm really hoping that occurs in the next few days, but I worry that it won't because I'm worried because it's Ain al-Helway, which is a Palestinian refugee camp, but we'll see. Israel has mastered bombing children in multiple countries and crying victims. Yes, and we get to hear litigation of why it's actually good to blow up children and why Israel is actually a peace-loving country. I like, once again, I've been thinking more about this in terms of like how Israel is undeniably like this oppressive and violent structure that is so clearly destabilizing the Middle East and causing so many issues in the region. And there are still these people who are like, no, we just need to support Israel. Like, I was literally looking at Lona Box's coverage of Sudan. He barely mentions the UAE. He barely mentions Israel. I'm about 90% sure that before the crackdown was launched in like 2021, in fact, I better look this up. Hold on, I need to look at my dissertation. The attitude of the generals towards the democratic protests was made clear on June 3rd, 2019, when they organized an RSF and policemen to crack down, killing over 100 people and injuring 900 more. What is particularly notable about this is that around the dates of the massacre, Hamedati had visited Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE, seemingly seeking their approval for the massacre and subsequent seizure of power by the military elite. Hamedati, the guy who everyone is now like, oh, I'm upset because there's pools of blood that you can see from space, but don't want to confront Israel's involvement. No. This guy was hanging out in Israel before he was carrying out crackdowns on protesters. And also, by the way, this guy was like, you have to normalize relationships with Israel. The destabilizing and negative role that Israel is creating in the Middle East, along with its horrible allies, is absolutely insane. It's just genuinely insane.
Of Israeli threats to Lebanon, of renewed attack, and the Lebanese government is trying its best, at least this is what it's expressing and saying, to contain the situation. However, the situation seems to be deteriorating, or at least escalating day after day. Ali Hashim, Al Jazeera, Beirut, Southern Suburb.
But yeah, like, I think when you look at what's going on in Lebanon and this idea that you're going to get some, like, peaceful Lebanese where you face resistance, where you destroy politics, like, what do you actually think is going to happen? Resistance isn't going to go away because it's a product of how Israel behaves and acts in the region. It's not like some amazing thing that's, like, going to just appear out of nowhere. Palestinians, Lebanese people, Syrians, Sudanese people are not interested in normalizing with Israel because of the way that Israel treats Palestinians, and pretending that elites from the outside are just going to enforce this is so insane, because relitigating what Israel is and acting as if it is a comparable force in the region to Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, when it is a facet of Western imperialism, is such a joke. And also, by the way, as bad as Iran may be, it is not an apartheid state. Iran has committed, no doubt, war crimes in Syria and other places, but I think it is 1,000,000,000% worth noting that it didn't do a genocide, that it did not kill as many civilians as Israel has in Gaza. Like, the number, by the way, they're saying, there's new reporting, which shouldn't actually come as that much of a shock, by the Max Planck Institute, estimates more than 100,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 23, far higher than the health ministry's confirmed count. We already knew this, by the way. We had that Lancet article, not the 600,000 one. We had another one which looked at death tolls using multiple different softwares and comparing, like, social media posts to analyze like how you worked out the death toll, like whether people had died, and they pointed to a much higher death toll. And then you had The Economist estimating that a low death toll in Gaza would probably be about 77,000, and an expected, like, a higher death toll would be like around 109,000. I think the number of Palestinians killed is humongous. The number of wounded brings it to well over 20% of the population in Gaza. I nearly said the population in Giardia, 180,000. So there are multiple different Lancet articles. The one I'm talking about is one that, like, did social media analysis that I don't fully understand because I'm not a statistician, but yeah. Using demographic modeling, household surveys, and death reports from social media, scientists say the ministry likely undercounts by 35 to 41%, especially women and older people, and those buried under the rubble. Their mid-range estimate, 112,000 Palestinians killed in the first 2 years. The number of civilians killed in Gaza, as I have said over and over again, is abnormal, even for wars that we are told and were and are incredibly brutal. As I have said over and over again, what makes Israel genocidal? What makes it genocidal is that it took aim at Palestinian social life alongside its long-standing logic of trying to expel Palestinians. That's the problem. The highest since the Rwanda genocide. Well, it's not just that it's the highest since the Rwanda genocide. It's like, even just look at anything. The population of civilians being killed is unbelievable. But even if it wasn't, the fact that their government are literally just like, including Israel's defense minister, by the way, not a fringe figure, someone who sits atop and commands people who we are regularly told are like awful and evil. Like Lonabox has a video on his channel about Brigadier General Yehuda Vach, and he's like, this guy is insane. But like, Yehuda Vach, right, is like a significant figure in the Israeli military who just openly says, I want to kill Palestinians and get rid of them. And he gets to do that under the command of a guy who is like, ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians now. And it's like, I'm sorry? And you're trying to tell me that this isn't genocide when we see them like openly enunciate their logic so regularly? But like all of this stuff going on in Lebanon is also the same thing. In Lebanon, I don't actually think they're trying to carry out genocide because they don't want to exterminate Lebanese Muslims. They just don't want them near Israel's border because they're obviously going to be people who have, like, in part because of the... Like, this is a thing, right? Sects don't matter necessarily as much as people think. It's normally to do with the material conditions experienced by that sect. So in Saudi Arabia, right, like, Shias are more likely to protest because they're in regions that are, like, less cared for by the government and are also, just generally treated very negatively. And so they're more likely to protest. Same in Bahrain. They're more likely to protest, not because they're Iranian implants there, but because they're marginalized by a Sunni government. And so in the context of like Shias in Lebanon, Israel's problem with them is that they're on the border, and because of the experience of them, being bombed and targeted by Israel the most, they're going to oppose Israel. And so Israel doesn't want them there. It wants to destroy border villages. Because also, by the way, many people would actually say this about Lebanon who would never admit it about Israel. Every settlement inside Israel, inside the West Bank, is built with the specific goal of surveilling Palestinians. And the same with the Gaza border. That's what those are for. We've seen a similar process in southern Lebanon, but it just doesn't possess the same goal of expelling Palestinians. Like, look at this, by the way. This is the environmental genocide committed by the occupation in the border areas and villages in its ugliest form from the town of Yaron, which was subjected to widespread destruction in its ancient pine forests and its olive vineyards. So this is pre-2023, I'd assume. And this is post. Like, look at that. Like, look at that. The trees remain here to some extent, but still scorched and burnt. And Israel goes, well, Hezbollah uses them against us. And it's like, bro, no one wants you there. Just fuck off and stop burning the things around you. Like, no one wants you there. You are such a horrible, malign, destabilizing influence in the Middle East. Genuinely. Like, Israel is just such a negative, destabilizing influence, and anyone who's positive on the topic is a fool. Like, why are you defending this, and why pretend to be a leftist? There was also a really good article on this topic, the Dispatch from Southern Lebanon, Life as Resistance at the End of the World. But this article was very good on this topic. It talked about, like, some really interesting stuff to do with Lebanon and life there. There are some great quotes about like how, as in Gaza, the target of this assault was ostensibly military, but in practice, what was being destroyed were the vital ecologies underwriting life. So we had like a lot of this, Israel engaged in huge destruction. But listen to this quote. This quote was really interesting, I thought. In October and November of 2023, friends who are farmers in the frontline villages and who depend on the agricultural seasons of tobacco, olives, and subsistence crops as well as on livestock such as goats, told me that they were being intentionally targeted by the Israeli military across the nearby borderline. One said, they see us tending to our livelihoods and then they shoot at us because we are out in our orchards harvesting our olives and living our lives while they cower in shelters. As has been extensively documented, the Israeli army used white phosphorus and incendiary bombs along the border, attacking olive harvesters, setting trees on fire and targeting firefighters who came to the rescue. What a surprise, Israel targeting rescue workers. Only two things are certain in life, death and Israel trying to kill anyone who tries to do rescue and emergency work. But yeah, like just listening to this person talk about it, there's also a really interesting thing here about tobacco, which is probably worth talking about because I just found it really, really interesting, to be honest. It's kind of like about how tobacco operates in southern Lebanon. because it's apparently such a really hardy crop. And there's a cool bit about goats actually, which I'll talk about. So tobacco is a cash crop that was introduced to South Lebanon during the Ottoman Empire and then taken over by the French colonizers during the Mandate period. In 1960, it became a Lebanese state monopoly under the Régie Libanaise des Tabacs et Tombac, a public company under the Ministry of Finance. Flexible, fleeting, and hardy, it thrives in adverse conditions such as poverty and war. Growing in the arid highlands of the Lebanese borderland, tobacco needs no irrigation. Its lifespan in the fields is brief. Planted in February, transplanted in March and April, and harvested in June, July, and August. It requires no storage facilities from the village home. It is worked by the many hands of village households, those who have not left the village to earn a living elsewhere, or to fight women. It's not Andrew Tate. Or to fight women, or to fight women, children, and the elderly. Through their cultivation of tobacco and the income it brings, inhabitants of the frontline villages hold on to home and land. I also really love the dialectic thing of death and life, of kind of like how tobacco kills you, but it also brings life to Lebanon. Régie Libanaise des Tabacs et Tombac? Is that really that bad? But yeah, it's really interesting that it's such a hardy thing. The long-suffering villagers of this borderland have always relied on the profit guaranteed by tobacco as a key supplemental income, and although it has a difficult history, they also call it al-nabti al-murra, the bitter crop. Tobacco is a lifeline to those who steadfastly remain in their villages through ever-returning seasons of war and devastation. I'm sorry, I do think that that's interesting. It does sound kind of stupid just going, wow, that is dialectics, but it matters. It matters in the sense of, how tobacco operates in Lebanese society, that it slowly was killing me for many years and perhaps for the rest of my life, but, it was pretty good for Lebanese people. I'll be smoking on that Lebanese pack. You know how it is. This fact is known to everyone, including Israelis, who target tobacco fields and harvests in every war. In South Lebanon, tobacco is lionized as Nabit al-Mukawama. Mukawama? The crop of resistance. Underwriting life in war and occupation, tobacco vividly exemplifies a resistant ecology. This is a really, really good article. There's also a crazy part about goats, and it just talks about how Israel ostensibly is targeting the military. Goats are another example. While scenes of starving horses stumbling through the streets of southern villages circulated on social media throughout 2024, and cats and dogs in borderland villages were reduced to skin and bones, goats are known for their abilities to thrive in adversity. They nimbly browse across the hills and valleys of the borderland, defying the explosives mined in the ground because they are too light to spring them. Did any of you know that goats apparently don't set off landmines? I have never heard that. I have never heard this story. It is not a fail-safe strategy, but it has allowed goats and their human companions, who make a living alongside them, to continue to thrive in the deadly landscape and resistantly reoccupy land that has been made deadly by US-made and Israeli-planted mines. I knew goats are rugged and that they can basically live with nothing, but I didn't know that they didn't set off landmines. I would have assumed that they would have set off landmines. This is sad as well. In the summer of 2024, an Israeli attack on a farm in Jezin killed 700 goats and ruined the livelihood of a livestock farmer. This pattern is repeated across the south and in Palestine. The Israeli war machine targets those resistant ecologies that have, until now, enabled life to continue in a land it wants to empty of life and resistance. By the way, this is the difference between, academia and fucking debates. When you're talking to some idiot on TikTok, all they're going to care about is coming up with ways to justify Israel killing people. And when you listen to academics talking, they're talking about resistance and stuff. Resistance through ecology and stuff, which is, yeah. No, nicotine isn't exclusively found in tobacco. You can get nicotine in here. Maybe it's because they have a small footprint. I would assume it's actually more to do with the weight and the way in which a goat places its weight. I would think, actually, if I were to guess. I don't know why. In fact, should we Google, why don't goats set off landmines? Oh, you were correct. This is another article about this. Most crucially, goats are small and light and can graze in the borderland's many minefields without setting off hidden explosives designed to kill humans who are not light-footed. Shout out to the goats out there. They the real goat. It's really interesting. This article's good. It's really sad though, like just the destruction of southern Lebanon and trying to make life impossible there, so southern Lebanese people are just basically unable to return to the land because Israel needs to have protection from people that it has attacked over and over again. And the things that they've been doing in Lebanon, I feel like are really going under the radar. Especially, the most notable is the attack on Ain al-Hilwa. Ain al-Hilwa is a Palestinian refugee camp inside Lebanon. Western Lebanon, a bit to the south of Beirut. It's quite near the sea. It's a Palestinian refugee camp with, I don't actually know how many people live there. 80,000 people live in Ain al-Hilwa, which is just crazy. It's in Sida. Thank you. Being safe in Beirut, but hearing constant drone noises. Yeah, 100%. Goats are awesome in general. Indeed they are. Very interesting creatures. My local park has goats. Yeah. I saw some this summer, like mountain goats, and it's just crazy that they're like living in these places that are so inhospitable. It's like Chris guessed, light-footed means that they are hesitate to put weight on the foot. Is that really it? And is that part of like the way in which they live as animals? Sorry to just distract because this is an important story. So this is the claim being made by Al-Khatin. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't really say this. It might be the name of someone. Thamin Al-Khatin, OCHR. So the OCHR, the Office of the Council of Human Rights, I believe it is saying that all the fatalities we have documented as a result of this strike were civilians, raises serious concerns that the Israeli military may have violated international humanitarian law principles on the conduct of hostilities. They bombed a fucking refugee camp filled with Palestinians. Like a refugee camp filled with people who have been expelled from Palestine decades ago and are still not allowed a state. And they just bombed it. They killed 13 people, potentially all civilians. You know who else did this shit? Fucking South Africa. I was about to say China bombing refugee camps. South Africa did this in Angola. They bombed a refugee camp, but they killed hundreds of people. Yeah, I know, may have. The appeal comes amid escalating Israeli military operations in Lebanon, nearly a year after the ceasefire. Almost a year since the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel was agreed, we continue to witness increasing attacks by the Israeli military, resulting in the killing of civilians, destruction of civilian objects in Lebanon, coupled with alarming threats of a wider, intensified conflict. OCHR spokesperson Thamin Al-Khatin told reporters in Geneva. He noted that the Israeli military's attacks have resulted in the killing of at least 120 civilians in Lebanon since the ceasefire agreement came into effect in November 17th, 2024. It's saying at least 13 civilians, including 11 children, were killed, and at least 6 civilians were injured. Bro, if that happens in Israel, that's like a national tragedy that we all have to go, no, and the entire world comes out and condemns. When Israel bombs Palestinian children in a refugee camp, they love it. They love it. We love it, and we must support them. Most moral army, surely they called and texted before the bombings. Yeah. You know, South Africa did that as well. Like, Israel and its supporters act as if that's unprecedented. South Africa used to drop leaflets on people before it went and killed them. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't really change. When you're fighting for your apartheid regime, it's bad. It's bad, objectively. The OCHR is saying that all civilians all the fatalities that we have documented were civilians. Israel killed 13 civilians, 11 children, in a refugee camp in Lebanon, and it's just kind of something that they do. There's 64,000 people, mostly from southern Lebanon, who are displaced, and Israel started constructing a wall at crossing Lebanese territory that makes 4,000 meters inaccessible to the population. Where actually is this wall? I've heard about it and seen it. Israel fucking loves walls.
The Lebanese government
Is this the wall that it's built?
released images showing the wall crossing the blue line. That's the unofficial border between Lebanon and Israel. Israeli troops are stationed on 5 hilltops. The Israeli military has also declared 2 buffer zones or no-go areas.
Just slowly encroaching and stealing Lebanese territory whilst they massacre people in refugee camps. And then they kill like one Hezbollah senior military figure. And it's like, no, it was actually really cool and epic. And it's just like, what is this? Like, what is this? Why do you bother defending this? It's disgusting. But like this as well from the human rights, the Office of the High Commissioner, not human, I don't know what I said it was. But I liked his name, Maurice Tidball Binns. I wonder what he looks like. He looks relatively normal. Just an interesting name. Maurice Tidball Binns. Wow. Just an odd name. It goes through Yarun in southern Lebanon. Their favorite anime must be Attack on Titan. You're talking about the Israelis. I saw a vid of a Palestinian going to a wedding after evacuation leaflets were dropped for the area it was being held in. This shit is so insane. Yeah, these evacuation leaflets are the biggest loads of bullshit. But this, like, notes, according to reports, an Israeli drone strike hit Ain al-Helwe, a Palestinian camp near Sidon, killing at least 14 people, among them Sidon. Among them 12 children, and injuring at least 6 others, making it the deadliest single strike since the November 24 ceasefire. Israel claimed it was targeting a Hamas training compound. Like, it's amazing. Israel just says we're targeting a Hamas training compound, and we just believe them because that's what it does. Look, but listen to this as well. You kind of forget that this all happens. I mean, I'd forgotten that this has happened. I don't even know if I saw this. On the 16th of November 2025, an Israeli Merkava tank fired on a UNIFIL patrol inside Lebanese territory, with shells landing only a few meters from the peacekeepers, endangering their lives. This followed an incident on the 26th of October in 2025, when an Israeli drone flew close to a UNIFIL position operating near Kfar Kila and dropped a grenade moments before an Israeli tank fired towards them. Like, it's just truly unbelievable. Like, Israel will just continually get away with violating the ceasefire, and then will be people who are continually going on about how it's actually Hezbollah that are the problem, when Israel proves over and over again that it is the issue, that it is the one that does not want peace. And then there's this article which is by Hiba Nasser for Middle East Eye, and it's like a pretty good synthesis of other reporting on this kind of stuff. But there's like it kind of talks about this, which is the main problem for Hezbollah and the current status quo, and it's kind of like, what can Hezbollah do without launching a full-scale conflict? Because where Hezbollah can inflict damage on Israel is through a full-scale military conflict where Israel has to come in, and they've blown the load of the pager attack, and it hasn't quite gotten rid of Hezbollah. And so what Israel really wants is to maintain this current situation. It's very clear that the resistance in Lebanon, like, all of the movements are very heavily compromised, because how else are they getting all of this intelligence out? It doesn't happen with Hamas. Like, Israel will sometimes assassinate a senior Hamas figure, but, I mean, it hasn't been confirmed by Hamas, but he hasn't spoken. But Abu Ubaidah was killed after, it took, 2 years to get Abu Ubaidah. It took over a year to kill Sinwar, whereas, they have known over and over again where senior Hezbollah officials are. Like, killing someone this senior in Hezbollah after killing his predecessor is, significant. Very little coverage of that. Yeah, indeed. But yeah, there's some analysis in that. But just listen to this. Near daily Israeli strikes and operations have continued, killing more than 300 people since the ceasefire, including at least 100 civilians, according to the UN. Hezbollah has not attacked Israel since the ceasefire began. And according to Ynet News, because of course, Israeli outlets, they're telling us that Israel has carried out nearly 1,200 operations in 21 Lebanese villages along the southern border, which remain heavily damaged and largely depopulated due to the continued Israeli presence and activity. The report said the scale of these operations described as unprecedented and reminiscent of the army's activities in the occupied West Bank. I wouldn't really necessarily compare it to that. I think it's more like Gaza in the sense of they're like just burning down territory and agricultural land to make the land unlivable, whereas the settlers mostly do that in the West Bank. In the West Bank, they basically just protect settlers. Do you also remember when the Israeli archaeologist got killed in Lebanon? That was a crazy story. This, piece of shit Israeli fucking archaeologist who does, settler tours of the West Bank and is an awful guy. He was Zaiv Ehrlich was heralded by far-right Israelis as a pioneer of illegal Israeli settlements, and his presence in South Lebanon raises questions. His entire career was just basically dedicated to pretending Palestinians didn't exist And then the Israeli soldiers took him into the West Bank and he just got smoked in a gunfight and he was like not a soldier. This was an unbelievable story. But the pager attack were military genius, right? Definitely not a war crime. Yeah, it's also about where they exploded that makes it such a war crime. And like in any other place, you would say that that's a major war crime, you know? In the same way that any other country who was acting like Israel does would be seen as the violator of the ceasefire.
سياسة القادم معروفة عندهم من أيام الأربعينات معروفة كيف بيقدموا الأرض شيئا فشيئا. قبل هذه الحرب ما كان في جدار أبدا، كان في هالسياج اللي موجود حد الطريق اللي بيعملوا عليه دورية حد البساتين هون، وهذا الجدار الإسمنتي عم يشتغلوا فيه بسرعة، ورش عم تشتغل بسرعة، وما بنعرف شو الهدف منه، ولكن كل ما عملوا جزء من هذا الجدار الإسمنتي بنلاحظ نحن كل فترة كل ما يقطعوا مسافة بيفوتوا لهم شوية، وعلى الأرض إذا بيفوت من هون صفر بيطلع بالآخر.
I cannot wait for the day that all of these walls fully come down. It will provide the same catharsis that was provided by the collapse of the Berlin Wall to many people. Although it would objectively be like, you know, a much better thing in terms of the world the day that all of these Israeli walls and monstrous borders come down. Because no matter how repressive the Stasi were, they never reached this kind of fucking level.
4 كيلومتر.
هذا الجدار اللي عم بيعملوه هذا جدار يعني مبين لسنين.
اليونيفيل عم يتواجد بالمنطقة هون أو بس حكى إنه في خرق وفل؟
لا هن عم بيتواجدوا على طول عندهم دوريات بالمنطقة عندنا هون. خرقات هي مش بس على الأرض، هي الخرقات على الأرض وبالسماء يعني بنكون بالليل نحن بنسمع صوت دبابات بس وين ما حدا بيعرف، هن بفوتوا بيطلعوا يعني ما في احترام للسيادة اللبنانية.
هذا الجدار ما بيبشر بالخير لأنه ما في عنا حدا يردعهم، عم يسرقوا ما حدا بيردعهم ويتمادوا بالسرقة، لأنه نحن كمان كل ما سرقوا كل ما وطينا راسنا كدولة كسلطة. نحن عم نشوفهم كيف بيفوتوا على أرضنا، كيف بتفوت آلياتهم، كيف
And also, I just want to say that, like, once again, this is the kind of problem with any kind of analysis that basically portrays why southern Lebanese people or anyone are just like puppets of Iran. Like, you can see someone talking like this, and you know, maybe this guy's someone who likes Hezbollah anyway. But, like, if you just listen to the experience, are you really surprised that people who live in the south of Lebanon and experience the brunt of Israeli policies hold a disdain for Israel? Like, this is why I also fucking hate Zionist propagandists. People like Hila and Ethan Klein in particular, who say Israel is constantly under attack from its neighbors, but also purport to be like pro-Palestinian leftists. Because do you not see the major link between these two things, you know?
كل صلافة يظهروا حتى إذا كان الدوري للجيش اللبناني يعني بيمروا وكأنه ما في حدا قدامهم. هذا مؤسف جدا. نحن بدنا هذه السلطة تدعم هذا الجيش، ما بنرضى أبدا أولادنا وضباطنا يظلوا ينهانوا أمام هذا العدو.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks for that. This is the other story. Israel used widely banned cluster munitions in Lebanon, photos of remnants suggest. So there are like photos and it's talking about them. The key points from this article are kind of like about how apparently Israel now claims that their cluster bombs are better. Because the reason that cluster bombs are banned is basically because they have duds and some of them don't explode and it scatters small bombs all over the place, which of course is dangerous, but Israel doesn't care. Israel doesn't care because children, women, men, civilians dying, that's okay as long as they're not, you know, Israelis. You know, anything going on there. And Israeli Jewish people, actually, I must add. Palestinians getting killed. Thumbs up by Israel. But yeah, so Israel's not technically party, because of course it's not, to the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which forbids their use, production, and transfer. But, like, generally, these are just, like, bad things because they kill civilians, and I thought that we're all meant to agree that doing that is bad. Yaroun is my family's visit. You can actually see some of our land in that video, and Fouad Saleh tills the land for farmers in the village. Crazy. I'm so sorry that that's the experience of living in Lebanon. It's just the curse of living next to fucking Israel. Like, I'm sorry, and people will be like, how dare you say that? And then people in Lebanon are blighted by Hezbollah, and it's like, yeah, be that as it may. Like, Israel's the one bombing them and stealing the land. Yeah, like, listen to this. Israel blanketed Lebanon with 4-meter cluster bombs, or 4M cluster bombs, I don't know what that means, in the final days of the 2006 war, with an estimated 1M failing to explode. The presence of unexploded cluster bombs continues to make life in South Lebanon dangerous, with more than 400 people killed by unexploded bomblets since 2006. That's 400 people's lives gone, you know. The huge number of unexploded cluster bombs in Lebanon was a main driving factor for the drafting of the Cluster Convention in 2008. But yeah, oh wait, there's an amazing bit here. Despite not being a party to the convention, Israeli officials condemned Iran's use of cluster munitions in Israel during the summer's 12-day war. The terror regime seeks to harm civilians and even use weapons with wide dispersal in order to maximize the scope of damage, said the Israeli military spokesman Brig General Efi Defrin. After an Iranian strike used cluster munitions on populated areas in southern Israel. Amazing. But yeah, apparently the Ra'am Eitan, the one that they're currently using, had a dud rate of 0.01%. But apparently this isn't true. Apparently this isn't true, according to Gabelnick and other arms experts who claimed that industries just lie. But yeah. Israel is doing amazing things. White phosphorus, cluster munitions, it doesn't care. If you get in its way, it's gonna bomb you, it's gonna take your land, it's gonna alter your politics, and there are apologists who will continually tell you that Israel is actually epic and moral and just and that we should support it because, I don't know, everyone's a radical jihadi.